Good evening, everybody. I'm Nate Eaton. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. It is November 3rd, 2025. Hope you had a great weekend, a good holiday weekend. My kids brought home so much candy, and then they went out again for so much candy. They had cousins over this weekend, so they wanted to, I guess compete over who could get the most candy. Anyway, we had a good weekend, a beautiful weekend in Idaho Falls, and good to be with you here on this Monday. Tomorrow is Election Day for us and many of you in the United States, so don't forget to vote. Tonight, an exclusive interview. For the first time, the man who dated Amy Bradley back in the 90s is speaking out about his relationship with her and her disappearance when she went on a cruise with her family. Now, you might be thinking, why is this such a big deal? A former boyfriend speaks out. Well, the context in this case matters. By the way, I'd love to know where you're watching from, and if you have any questions for me, we'll try to get them in. Um, so we've talked about this story before. Amy Bradley disappeared on a cruise ship. She's from Virginia, disappeared in March of 1998. She went on a cruise with her family and vanished. And there have been so many questions since then. The Netflix came out with a special earlier this year called Amy Bradley is Missing. Interviewed members of her family, interviewed people who were on the ship, showed surveillance images, camera footage, stuff like that. The premise, one of the premises, one of the themes that came out of that Netflix series is that Amy was potentially in a poor mental health state because she was dating women and her family did not approve of her sexuality. Now, her family has come out and said that's not true. They have said she was bisexual, but that they were fine with it, that they approved, that they had no issue with it. But it is an issue that continually it has come up online on different chat rooms, comments, things like that. And the family's hearing about it a lot. That you should have been more accepting of your daughter, your sister, and then she'd still be alive or around. And there's so many theories on whether she is alive or dead. There's been people that look just like her, women that look just like her in the Caribbean spotted. And then, of course, this long, you think, well, there's no way she could be alive. Or could she? That's the question. Well, Tom, who has asked me not to use his last name, Tom is speaking out tonight about his relationship with Amy. And he admits she was bisexual, but he also says a lot more about their relationship, about her mental state of mind, about what he believes happened, about the Netflix series that he was interviewed for, but he was never used in it, and about the investigation and whether Amy will be found in his eyes. And he's answering questions, that he wants to talk about. He worked with Amy back in the 90s again at a restaurant in Richmond, and he's thought about her every day since she vanished. And so I caught up with him this weekend. I did an interview with him on Zoom. Brad Bradley, Amy's brother, was also on the conversation and wanted to clear up a couple of rumors that he's heard about, some reports that have come out recently. This is one of those stories that I hope, you hope, is getting close to maybe getting progress about where Amy Bradley is. And by highlighting it here, by talking about it on the Courtroom Insider, I'm hoping to at least lead to some answers. So that's kind of the background of it. You're going to see photos that have never been seen before publicly with Tom and Amy when they were dating, and hear his thoughts about the whole investigation. Joining me now, Brad Bradley and Tom, a man who dated Amy Bradley several years ago. Before we get going, gentlemen, Brad, I have to ask you about, is your real name Brad Bradley? Because I didn't last time, and I got so many people that asked me. So can we clear up that rumor right now?
Yeah, I'd love to. Story of my life. But first of all, thanks for having me back on. So I'm named after my dad. So I'm Ronald Lane Bradley Jr. And the story goes when they brought me to my mom after she had delivered me and handed me to her, she said she looked down and said he looks like a Brad. So I suppose she wasn't thinking too much about what her last name was at that time. I think she just had a sense that I didn't maybe look like a Ronald, even though they wanted to name me after Dad. So Brad's always been a nickname from the very beginning that kind of just stuck. So that's what I've gone by. Yeah.
And it's very memorable. So glad that we could clear that up. Tom, I wanna ask you a couple questions as we get going
Sure,
here. This is
absolutely.
the first time that you've spoken publicly about this, but I would imagine that Amy Bradley and the circumstances going back several decades are something that you have thought about quite a bit over the years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think about Amy every day since she's disappeared. I mean, I still have all the stuff that I accumulated and she gave me and gifted me. And, I've kept that with me all these years. So, yeah, I think about her every day. It was really hard to think about her being out there wanting somebody that was close to her and knew care about her, um, not being able to find her and help her. So yeah, it worries me, and it's been on my mind for the last 27 years. This is the first public interview that I've done, but I did spend a lot of time with the producers of from Ample Entertainment.
Mm.
They flew me out to Culver City, and I spent about an entire day with them at their not production office, but the set that they use to do their interviews out in California.
So they were
But they
aware
chose
that
not to use any of that.
that was my next question. They were aware, and you had spent a lot of time with them. They were aware that you had been in a relationship with Amy.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think you weren't brought into the documentary?
I guess I just didn't fit the narrative or the direction that they wanted to go. The feedback that the feedback that I got from Ari Mark and both Phil Lott when they interviewed me was real positive. They appreciated my time. I did a phone interview with Ari prior to setting the appointment up in California. So, I talked to him for about 45 minutes and I just went through how I met Amy, how we started dating, what we did in January, what we did in February, where we were at March, where she, ultimately went on the cruise, what I was doing, and what I did when I found out Amy had disappeared. And I covered all that. I talked to both Ari and Phil. I got there at 10 in the morning. I left a little after 3 o'clock. So I was there in their set location for 5 hours.
Well, you told them, but we didn't get a chance to hear that. So let me ask you, how did you meet Amy? Walk us through when you guys met and what the early stages of that relationship were like.
Well, we both worked at the same restaurant in Richmond, Virginia, out in Midlothian. Um, it was a high-end steak and chop house. I had been working there for a couple of years. Amy started as a food runner there, and we just became work friends. And I got to know her on a day from just the day to day of working with her. So that's how we came to be friends and originally get to know each other. Then there was the time came where it was Christmas, and that's the busiest time of the year in the restaurant business with all the Christmas parties, especially working at a real popular high end shop house. And um, it just got to the point where we were seeing each other on a regular basis at work. And she approached me one day and said, "Hey, listen, are you going to the Hollywood? Not Hollywood, sorry, they go into the holiday Christmas party." And we had a holiday Christmas party on December 22nd. Um, and she wanted to know if I was going. And I said, I don't know. I got to work that night. The restaurant closed early, so the folks that were working could go to the holiday party, but we were still open, and I was working, and I was on the fence on going. So this was probably about 2 weeks before the party, and she just wouldn't. She was relentless about it. She was just like, "I'm going to get a yes out of you. You're definitely going to go." And I'm like, Amy, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go or not. And ultimately, she kind of put her foot down and said, "I expect to see you there when you get off of work." So that's the night we really kind of took our friendship to the next direction. So I got there. Amy wasn't there. I was hanging out with just other friends' work. This was a big restaurant. They had quite a few employees. It was a really large company. And so I was just hanging out, catching up. And then Amy walks in, and she was wearing this long black dress. And I'd never seen her with makeup on. She had makeup and bright red lipstick, and she looked high heels on, and she looked fantastic. And she came right over to me and pulled me out on the dance floor, and we danced, and then we just hung out together the rest of the night.
Mm.
So um, that's how the relationship started. I walked her to her car when it was time to go home, and she slid me her phone number and asked me to call her. And she gave me a kiss goodnight, and then I called her the next day. And that from that point on, we started seeing each other on a pretty regular basis, right up until the cruise.
So, and the fact that you worked together too, I'm sure you saw each other quite a bit.
Yeah, we worked different. Well, that was the neat thing about it was is that I worked a different schedule than Amy. I
Mm.
had a management administrative position at the restaurant. I didn't work on the dining room floor very often. I was a substitute manager when managers needed to go on vacation or, had an emergency or whatever, and I covered on holidays and busy nights and things like that. At the time, I had other roles that I did at the restaurant. And so I didn't see her a lot, like actually during shift work. I would
Mhm.
catch her coming in as I was leaving. So we started this friendship that in the parking lot where she'd show up, to come into work and I'd be leaving and we'd stand out and talk to in the parking lot for 10, 15 minutes. And that's how we really got to know each other. And
Right.
then she'd go to work and I'd go home.
So you
But
guys start dating end of the year around Christmas time.
yeah, so we spent all of the Christmas party, and that was the 22nd. We went on our first date on the 23rd. I went to lunch with her the next day. And then, we had everybody's busy at the end of the year, particularly during Christmas. The next time I saw Amy was on Christmas evening. After she did her family Christmas with Brad, Ron, and Ira, and I did my family Christmas with my family in Richmond. I went over to her house where she was living with three roommates, and one of her roommates worked at the restaurant with us, and yeah, I hung out there, and that was the start. We had to work through the rest of the week because you go straight from Christmas into New Year's Eve, and then we went on our first like really nice date on January 2nd. We went to a really nice Italian restaurant in Richmond, and then went and saw Chicago, the Broadway Under the Stars series they had in Richmond at the time. We
Yeah.
went to the theater.
Talk about what happened in January, February, March. I mean, did the relationship progress and you guys were
Yeah,
still seeing each other pretty seriously?
yeah. I saw Amy probably 3, 4 days a week. Um, some nights Amy was real old fashioned. She wanted me to plan things to do. It wasn't like just go out and hang out or just go out and drink at a bar or just pick her up for dinner. She wanted me to plan things, so I had to be creative. And if she didn't like doing something, she was flat out telling me, well, we're not doing that. But one thing I want to point out is that I'm 8 years older than Amy. So I was 31 when I started dating Amy. And so I ran in kind of a different social circle than she did at that time. And so the one thing about us dating is that we did things that were new to her or different for her than she was accustomed to doing with her friends from college. So, we did I don't know, more grown up kind of dates, if that's a thing. But I was more accustomed to going out to dinner and doing things that were romantic and going to see shows and going to see bands. And we did the things that she liked to do too. I mean, she was big on karaoke, loved to go out and play pool, and we would do those things. We'd factor those things into our nights. But a lot of times, I would make plans to do something, and I would get real creative and come up with a real cool date, and I'd get there to pick her up, and she'd call an audible and go, hey, my brother's in town, so we're going to go meet up with him and his girlfriend Erin. He was dating Erin at the time. Or, hey, I want you to come meet my parents. We're all going to go out and have drinks after we go to dinner, things like that. So
Mhm.
we made road trips. We went out of town. We went to the Outer Banks a couple of times. I'm originally from Williamsburg, Virginia. I had a lot of friends and family still down in that area, so we would make the 45-minute drive from Richmond down to Williamsburg and hang out with my friends. We just did a lot of fun things. We went out of town. We went up to DC a number of times. We, just we planned dates and did it and traveled and had a lot of fun together.
Did you have a chance to meet Brad and her family, and in exchange, did she meet your family too?
Yeah, sure. So Brad was actually the first person I met. We in the family, and then I eventually met Ron and Iva. Brad was home from He was home from college during Christmas break. So, once Amy and I started hanging out, I can't remember what day it was or where we went, but she's like, "Hey, we're going to meet up." I went to pick up Amy, and she said, "Hey, we're going to meet up with my brother and his girlfriend." So I met Brad first, and Brad and I hit it off right away. And we would just go out to Amy had, I don't know, 4 or 5 like local watering holes that she liked to hang out on the south side of Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
So we would just kind of float through, rotate through those. There was a couple places that did live music that she liked to go to. She loved to sing. So, we would go there. I had some friends that were local musicians that would allow Amy to get up and sing with them from time to time. So she really got a big kick out of that.
Did she ever talk about having a rough relationship with Brad or with her parents, or, not fitting into the family?
No, not at all. Actually, she loved Brad. Like I said, when Brad was, as our relationship progressed and Brad went back to school, if he came home for any reason, um, our plans changed immediately. Oh, I got to see my brother. He's in town tonight. He's going to only be here till tomorrow. So, she loved her brother. She called him her baby brother. She loved Brad. They were extremely close. And, it was probably a week or two into us dating that I met her mom and dad. When you date Amy, you date her family because she's so close. She's always wanting to do things with them. So, I got the opportunity to know Ron and Iva pretty well in a very short period of time.
So
As long as
if she's probably telling you about her family, then she obviously brings up one day that they're going to go on this cruise. Do you remember that discussion, and what did you think when, she said we're going to go on this family cruise?
Yeah, I was actually, so she had moved out right after we started dating. She had moved out of the house that she was living with her 3 other roommates and rented an apartment maybe a couple miles down the road. It was still in the same vicinity. And we were sitting on the couch one day, and she came in and said to me, she goes, "Hey, my dad is going on this cruise, had won this cruise from work, and they want Brad and I to go." And she was real apprehensive. She was like, "I don't know. I don't really like boats." And I said, "Amy, look, a cruise ship is not a boat. A cruise ship is a ship. It's a hotel on the water." I said, "Short of a hurricane, you're never going to feel like you're on the water." And so I said, you'll have a great time. I was real encouraging for her to go, but she was initially apprehensive about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So she goes, and would you remember to walk us through those, first few days? This was before the days of cell phones and before internet and things like that. So how did you learn that she had vanished?
Brad's girlfriend at the time, Erin, had called me. I had subsequently left the restaurant that we were working at together. And I was working out of town. So I hadn't seen Amy. I saw Amy the Tuesday prior to her leaving on the cruise. But I had talked to her by phone.
Mm-hmm.
But I was working out of town. So I was at work at a restaurant in Williamsburg, and I got a phone call from Erin. And Erin told me, she goes, "They think Amy's vanished. They think that maybe she's fallen overboard. We don't know." And so I immediately got Ron's phone number, and I called Ron, and I spoke to Ron on the phone, because they were I don't remember where they were. Brad, where were you guys
When we called, let family know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had gotten off the boat on.
Yeah. So they were still on Curacao, and I talked to Ron for like 2 minutes. And then I got in my car and I drove to the Bradley's house in Creekwood and spent that night and the next day with Erin to keep her company.
Hmm.
And I was there when the Bradleys flew home 2 days later.
So what are you thinking initially when this happens? Like she really did fall into the water? Is that what you thought?
No, I never thought that. I mean, I thought that for a second because that's what I was given. But
Yeah.
once I got more detail, um, I was like, how do you fall in the water? I mean, that was, I just thought that was silly. I was like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you? So, um, once I found out and I got more details from Brad and, and Ron and Iva and about like the missing pictures, I was convinced that somebody met her, liked her, and took her. And I still believe that to this day. Amy was super social with people. She would strike up a conversation with anybody. If you paid her attention and you were polite and you were courteous, she was always nice back to you. We would go out and she'd go to the ladies' room and we'd be sitting in a bar, and I'd look at my watch and I'd be like, "Where is she?" And she's been gone like 25 minutes. And I'd look across the room and I'd see her talking to somebody that she didn't even know. She just struck up a conversation. So it didn't surprise me that um, that she, was social on the boat and met people and struck up conversations. That didn't surprise me at all. But I wouldn't have gone with the family to Curacao if I didn't think that somebody took Amy.
Yeah, tell me about that. You went with them back there.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was another thing that was left out of the documentary. They did show a newspaper clipping of me from a Curacao newspaper in the documentary, a black and white, newspaper clipping. But yeah, I myself, Brad, Amy's uncle, and her dad, and I all flew down to Curacao 2 weeks after Amy disappeared. Her two uncles had gone previously on the cruise ship, and when they got back, we made plans to go down, and we took a suitcase full of not wanted, yeah, like
Missing posters.
reward
Like,
posters.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we took like a suitcase full of those and went down to do this press conference. And I specifically wanted to go because one, it was killing me that we didn't know where Amy was and that she was wherever she was. She wanted somebody that she knew to walk through the door
Hmm.
and make it all right for her
Hmm.
and find her and bring her home. And I knew that would have been me, her dad, or her uncle, or her brother. And so, and I also wanted to be there to support. I mean, it was chaotic at the Bradley house. I mean, Iva had set this command center up. They were getting hundreds and thousands of leads. Most of them were just people looking for money. There was this huge reward, and I wanted to go down there and support the Bradleys, but also protect them and do whatever it took to bring her home.
Yeah. So do you still think, Tom, that she's alive?
Um, I, you would think over a period of time that's gone by that um, most people would think no. But if you knew Amy and the tenacity that she had and the self discipline and the strengths, um, she could survive it.
So now I want to ask um, a little bit about the whole thought that's been put out there, the narrative that she was in a relationship with a woman, that she was a lesbian, and that her family did not approve of this. Did
Okay.
did she ever talk to you about, having feelings for women or
Well,
perhaps being gay? I mean, anything like that?
yeah. Well, so when I first met Amy, over the time when we were just friends, it, it's the restaurant business. The restaurant business is full of the rumor mills. Everybody talks. It's a very social work environment. I don't know if you've ever worked in a restaurant or not, but you become kind of a family. You develop cliques and friends, and you go out after work together and things like that. And I had heard that Amy was a lesbian, and I never gave it much thought. And because I just liked hanging out with her, I liked her a lot as a person. I found her really attractive and just funny. Amy had a great sense of humor. She was always cracking jokes and, kind of the center of attention. So we were out on a date, but, this whole thing happened with Christmas and the Christmas party. And I was like, oh, so I didn't want to say anything or ask her about it because I didn't want to mess anything up. I liked how the direction of this relationship was going.
Hmm.
And it came to be that we were out one night sitting at a bar and we were sitting on the corner. So I'm sitting in one angle and she's sitting in the other. And we're talking, and another woman came over and got her attention. And she excused herself. She goes, "Hey, listen, I'll be right back." And so she walked over to the corner um, of the restaurant, and I could see them. They were in eye shot, and they had a 2-minute conversation. Amy came back over and I go, "Hey, what was that all about?" She goes, "Oh, I used to date her."
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, well, what are you doing with me?" She goes, "I like who I like. Do you have a problem with that?" And Brad's laughing because she was super direct like that. And I said, "No, no, it's cool. I totally get it." And things were going well, and we had a real normal boyfriend girlfriend relationship. Amy was very attentive, very affectionate, very loving, very thoughtful to me, and I felt super comfortable with her. So I didn't give it much thought after that, and it never came up again.
I wanted to ask you, you just said boyfriend, girlfriend. So you would consider her your girlfriend. She would have considered you her boyfriend
Yeah, she introduced me to people as her boyfriend,
as her boyfriend.
and I
Okay.
introduced her as my girlfriend, and I took her out for Valentine's Day, and I mean, it was, we dated,
Did you
we
go all
dated.
out for Valentine's Day? Do you remember what you did?
Yeah, sure. So I did. So I pulled some strings, and there was another really high-end shop house in town that was kind of our big competitor. It was a friendly rivalry, and I knew the
Hmm.
owners and I knew the GM. So I called them and I said, "Hey, I know it's Valentine's Day, busiest restaurant day of the year, but um, can I get a reservation?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." So they totally hooked us up. I picked up Amy um, from her um, from her apartment. We we have pictures of us together on more than one occasion, doing things together. And I picked her up, and she actually wore the same um, outfit that she's wearing in the photograph that was taken. The portraits that were taken on the cruise ship.
Mm.
So, but she had blonde hair still at the time, same red lipstick, looking like $1 million. And we walked in, and everybody in that restaurant's head turned, and they sat us smack dab in the middle table of the restaurant. So, like I said, they were friends and professional professional friends, and they, we in the restaurant business, you take care of other restaurant managers and operators when they come in. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great night.
Did she give you anything for Valentine's Day, or did you give her something?
I did. So, um, I don't really want to talk about what I gave her because
Okay.
it's very personal,
Sure.
but she she gave I have what she gave me for Valentine's Day right here with me.
Mm.
So at the time in the late '90s, I had a side hustle in the cigar business. It was a huge craze back then. And um, Brad, you remember that I gave you a ton of cigars,
Yeah, man.
but
Yeah, I
but
still
she
still have my Cohiba boxes from back then.
yeah, there you go. So I had a connection with Cuban cigars back then, and they weren't allowed to be around, but I had a way of getting a hold of them. And so Amy gave me an antique cigar box for
Oh
Valentine's Day.
wow.
Yeah, and I still have it. It's an old Webster Golden Wedding um, cigar box, and it's held together with antique like cloth tape. But I still
Wow.
have it. And then inside the box, she gave me a picture of her um, from December 22nd, the night at the Christmas party, in this black frame.
Oh
And this is
wow.
what, and she wrote me a real nice. She gave me a card and a note, and etc.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So, um, just to uh put a pin in or a fine point, the girl comes over, the lady comes over, they go have this conversation. She comes back to the table. You ask kind of who that was. She says, I used to date her. and then I like who I like. Did she
Right.
seem at all like stressed or worried or concerned about her sexuality or the fact that she had dated this woman or that her family might not have been accepted? It seems to me the way you tell the story is she was very comfortable and it is what it is, and she was able to live her life.
Well, I never brought it up again, and I
Hmm.
never asked her mom and dad about it, and I never asked her brother about it. But I can tell you the amount of time I spent together with the Bradleys as a whole, or either with Brad or with Ron and Iva together, or all of them together, or just that I saw no tension in that family at all. None. Amy loved her dad. She loved her mother. She was a total daddy's girl. She told me um, that that if I wanted to get anywhere with her in like relationship wise, that I needed to be the same kind of guy that her dad is in the way he treats her mother.
Mm.
So, that was, and I'm from the South. I grew up down there. I had very well mannered parents. I grew up to be a very polite young man and gentleman. And when I was 31 years old, I was a very respectful uh, boyfriend, and I treated Amy with a tremendous amount of respect, and she in return was very kind and thoughtful and respectful to me too. And I never saw any tension in their relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad,
And
let me ask you at this point. I hate to, just harp on this one particular point, but there is a pretty strong narrative out there that the whole, one of the things is she could have been having this bad relationship with her family because of her sexuality, and because of that, she was not in the right frame of mind. Um, what were your family's thoughts about her relationships, about who she was dating? I mean, were there ever any arguments or contention in the family because of that?
No, I mean, Amy had come out as bisexual to my family, more than 3 years prior to that cruise. So, the initial, I guess, surprise by my parents um, had well since passed. There was really never any talk of it. Amy did date women and guys throughout high school and college, and nobody's arguing that point. I think that obviously when I met Tom around Christmas time in 1997, and he's just a fantastic guy, nicest guy in the world, and treated Amy like gold. They thought a lot of each other, and you could tell when they were together. So at the time, there was absolutely nothing, no contention whatsoever between any of us. There was no arguments ever. Amy and I never had a crossword in my entire life. So that the narrative that got put out there based on how her sexuality was presented on the Netflix series was unfortunate. Again, not because that doesn't tell part of her story, but that it doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't tell, for Tom to be left out completely with the feelings that they shared for each other and the time they spent together. I think painted a picture that was chosen not to present the whole story, and people have taken that and run with it. And there's the one I guess I'd call particularly disgruntled ex-girlfriend in the series who made it seem like my I guess more so my dad than my mom was had a big problem with it. But there was absolutely none of it. I mean, the day before she disappeared, Amy's on Dad's back in the water on Aruba for a half an hour or so, and we're playing and laughing, and there's just no truth to it. So, we've because of how it was presented on Netflix, and the fact, the biggest problem I had with it to begin with was that her sexuality has absolutely nothing to do with what happened to her. But if people find it important enough to talk about, I think all of it should be talked about, which is why Tom's sitting with us here today. But yeah, Amy was as confident as they come. She had no qualms about who she was or what she liked or who she was with. So again, I think although we're going to be grateful for what the documentary did for Amy and her name and her story around the world and all this attention that it's brought. I think it was unfortunate that a person like Tom, who has never had anything but wonderful things to say about Amy and me and my family, and it just was completely cut. It bothered us quite a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm here today, because when Brad and the Bradleys, Brad, Ron, and I've all got an advanced preview of the Netflix special, and I got a text from Brad the day right after they saw it. He goes, "Hey man, you're not in it," and I'm like, "Well, it's not about me, and it's all about Amy. At least they're getting Amy's story out there, and
Mhm.
and that was the goal of the whole thing." But the reason, I've been talking to Brad ever since and Ron and Iva ever since the Netflix special came out, and Brad has been representing the family amazingly, but he's been spending way too much time defending Amy and her sexuality and her mental health, when people really need to be focusing on trying to find her and trying to find out what happened to her and the truth, instead of him wasting an hour or two every week
Hey,
uh, rebutting these podcasts that got the story wrong.
Yeah.
And we need to change the focus, and that's why um, I decided that I would come on with Brad today, um, and try to clear some things up. Yeah, I was aware that Amy dated girls. It didn't matter to me. She liked me because she liked who she liked. She flat out told me. We had a normal relationship. We did normal boyfriend girlfriend things. I dated her the entire month of January, entire month of February, and then at the end of February, I changed jobs. I stopped seeing her as much, but I still saw her. I wasn't seeing her, 3, 4 times a week like we were in January and February. I saw her in March. I saw her. I spent time with her um, all the way up till the week before the cruise. Um, and I was fully expecting to get a postcard or a phone call or something from her, and it never came. So, and I got the news that she had disappeared. So I had changed my focus. I left the job that I had in Williamsburg. I worked with a family for a couple of months, um, just making myself available to help them in any way, shape, or form. And then finally, eventually I couldn't continue down that path because I had bills to pay and rent to pay and things like that. So I ended up having to go back to work. But, it was really important that I made myself available to help the Bradleys because they were devastated that Amy was gone.
Now, Tom, I want to ask you about a woman named Kat who's publicly identified herself on social media, saying that she worked with you guys, you and Amy, and and there's been accusations that you might have been a beard, which for those people, unfamiliar with that term, it's a slang term that it's like a fake partner, I guess, to really hide their sexuality. I'm probably not explaining it very well. Have you, what do you think about those accusations? I mean, were you maybe just a plant for Amy that she secretly was seeing women, but you were just in public her boyfriend?
Well, I don't think that. I can share a little bit of context on why. One, Kat, Amy, and I all worked at the same restaurant. I didn't know Kat well. I only interacted with her a little bit. She wasn't part of the social circle of friends of Amy's that I was hanging out with when I spent time with Amy. I did know about the other woman that was in the Netflix special, Molly. Amy had, when I was first started dating Amy, she wore this University of Kentucky baseball hat, and it was. So I asked her. I said, "Oh, did you go to Kentucky?" And she goes, "No, no, I went to Longwood, but I have a really good friend that works at the University of Kentucky," and she told me her name was Molly. So that was the only time that either one of those names ever came up in our relationship. Kat and Molly weren't in. Molly was living in another state, and Kat was not in that social circle. So I don't know anything about their relationship prior. Amy didn't discuss that with me, but And I also we didn't run in the same social circles that Amy was prior. I mean, Amy was looking for a more adult type of relationship. And like I said, when we first brought this up, we did things out of town a lot. We did things in parts of the city of the greater Richmond area that Amy didn't typically hang out with when her friends from college. So, I would say that, I know that I wasn't a beard. I took her to Valentine's Day. I have tons of pictures with her. You can tell by our body chemistry and our body language that, we're together. I've got notes that she's written me, and cards that she's written me. So I know I'm not a beard. I don't know if Kat has forgotten that we work together. Maybe she has. Like I said, I never knew her very well. Um, but I would definitely say I wasn't a beard. I loved Amy to death, and I enjoyed every minute I spent with her. But I couldn't put myself in the position of Ron, Iva, and Brad.
Yeah.
And I knew how bad I felt, so I knew that it was 100 times fold what they were going through. And
Right.
like I said, the amount of people that came out of the woodwork when the reward came out it was insane. The Bradleys were grasping at straws. They wanted any information they could to bring their daughter home. And they didn't know who to believe and who to trust. And they needed people around them that could look past some of this stuff and help them decipher what was valid and what wasn't. And that
Now,
was part of my decision to go to Curacao.
right. So, which I think it says something, the fact that you were willing to go. It wasn't just like you were just one of her friends or someone that had a loose relationship with her. The fact you quit her job, went down with the family. Have you guys kept in touch all these years?
It's been, well, no, it became overwhelming for me. So
Mm,
I stayed in touch with the Bradleys for quite some time, and then my life happened,
right.
and we lost touch. And then a couple years after Amy disappeared, I ran into Brad down at a bar in downtown Richmond, and we hung out and caught up. And then they called me. Then Brad called me at work. I was running another steakhouse. There's a lot of steakhouses in Richmond, Virginia, and I was running another one at that time. And I was at work, and Brad called me and said that they had found Amy, and that was the whole Frank Jones thing. So, um, and we stayed in touch for a while, and then I was involved. I was in touch with the family through that ordeal, and then life happened again, and it wasn't until last spring that I reconnected with the Bradleys again in any extent, and I've been in touch with them for the last year. Up until the Netflix special broadcast that I talked to Iva, I don't know, once a day.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I got a phone call or a text message, actually, from James Renner last spring. I got the gentleman who's writing the book about Amy, or has written a book about Amy. So I got a text message from him, and I was wondering how he got my information. So I called him right back. I was driving home from work, and I called him in the car, and we had about a 15-minute conversation, and we just touched base on, yes, I'm the Tom that dated Amy. Yeah, I went to Curacao. I told him a little bit about the trip. I told him about, touch. We had like I said, about a 15-minute phone conversation. He asked me to do an extensive interview with him because he was planning to go to Curacao, and wanted some details about our trip so he could go to those places. And I said, well, before I share anything else with you guys or with you, James, I said, I really want to make sure that this is okay with the Bradleys, because I'm very protective about Amy and her image and my memories of her and in the Bradleys.
Right.
So I ended up James actually gave me Brad's phone number because I didn't have it, and I sent Brad a text, and Brad sent me a text and said, yeah, we know Renner. He's writing a book. We can't officially work with him because we're contractually obligated to the production company making the Netflix special. But if you want to talk to him, go ahead. a few days later, I get a text from a woman, I think her name was Jessica from Ample Entertainment, saying, "Hey, are you the Tom that dated Amy Bradley and went to Curacao?" And I responded. I said, "Yeah, I'm that person." And they responded back by text like, "Well, we'd like to talk to you." And I said, "I don't know really what I can share different than what Ron and um, and Brad can share because we all went together."
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no mention about, like, in the text message about my relationship with Amy or my friendship or anything. That it was just about the trip to Curacao. And I
Right.
was a little apprehensive because I didn't know that I didn't know at the time if I wanted to participate in any formal interviews or contribute to a book or anything like that. So some time passed, and then Iva reached out to me, and we caught up and we had a lengthy conversation. And she had told me that things didn't go as they planned with James Renner, and they weren't going to continue working with him. So I never followed up with Renner. And then, but she asked me if I would get back in touch with the folks from Ample. They were very excited about the possibility of the special and what it could bring, and how many, she started giving me the statistics about, how many countries would see the special and how many millions of people would learn Amy's story. So I said, sure. And subsequently, the woman I reached out wasn't working on the project anymore, and Ari Mark reached out to me. So I ended up having, we're going back to where we started our conversation today. Um, I had a phone interview with Ari. I explained, like we're talking now, and I went through my history with Amy and how I knew her, and what we did together. And and then over the course of probably a month, the arrangements were made where I went out to Culver City. And that was last October. So that was October of 2024 is when I went out there. And then I subsequently did my interview.
Okay. And so your overall takeaways from the documentary, what'd you think when it came out?
Well, I mean, you can only fit so much in 3 hours. There, I think ultimately, it did its job. It got the story back out there and brought Amy to the forefront again, and got millions of people talking about it. I don't think that it helped the case at all, um, focusing on her sexuality, listen, and the fact that she had a or implying that she had a poor relationship with her family, because that wasn't the reality of the time. Amy, the Amy Bradley I knew, first of all, was making more money than she'd ever made because she had been promoted to a server at a high end steakhouse in Richmond, Virginia, which was also the busiest restaurant in the city. She had just gotten a new place. She loved her dog. She was getting ready to get another dog. She was planning on getting a master's degree. She was going to work for her aunt. I mean, she had a lot of positive things going on in her life. I never saw her um, uh, upset. She never had an unkind thing to say to me. Um, and I never saw her treat anybody like that. So I don't feel like she was in a poor mental health state when she went on the cruise. The other side of that is that it really detracted from people looking for her, because everybody, you take, if 6 out of 10 people follow the narrative, that's 6 out of 10 people that aren't going to be out there helping trying to find Amy.
Hmm.
So it was, instead of 10 out of 10 people trying to find Amy. I don't, they also, there's a lot of things, her two uncles were very devoted to her. They immediately went on the same cruise, did the investigation. I felt like, I was really excited that they focused on Yellow. I really was excited that they got his daughter involved. I was really excited to see that. So, I mean, there was a lot of positive things in the 3-part special that I was really excited about. But all in all, I felt like they wrapped it up in a way that was unproductive to finding Amy.
Do you think that this case will be solved?
Well, I hope so, and I pray that will. And I feel like the specialist certainly, from what I can share and what I've been told, and some things I can't discuss.
Hmm.
I feel like they're on track to get to the bottom of it. And that's what the family wants to find out. They just want to know, is Amy alive? Is she not alive? What happened to her? Who took her? And let's get to the bottom of it. And I hope and pray every day that she's still alive. She had a lot of tenacity and a very strong, independent person. And if anybody could survive something like this, Amy could. The one thing that I remarked about, I remember clearly talking to Ron and Brad about when we were down in Curacao, was what kind of handful Amy would be to anybody that was a captor,
Mm.
because she would fight tooth and nails until it was time, till she couldn't do it anymore. That's the kind of scrapper, that she was or is. Um, and, you know, it, it's, I talked to Brad about this the other night when I was talking to him on the phone driving home from work. I'm like, I don't know how Brad continued his life. And Ron and Iva continued their life, but Brad ended up, finishing college, getting an advanced degree, has a very successful career. And, I was like, how do you stay focused? How did you continue your life? And he was like, well, I lived my day every day in the actions that I did. I did them based on, would my sister be proud of me or not?
Mm.
And, and that's kind of sums up how I felt too. I just, if anybody can survive this, Amy could survive it.
Hmm.
And
Brad,
I'd love to see her walk through the door of one day of her parents' house, or worst case scenario, we found out really what happened to her.
right.
And you know, I think the Bradleys deserve that. The people that care and love Amy, deserve that too.
Yeah. Brad, what can you tell us? Are there any new developments since we last spoke, since the docuseries came out?
Yeah, there are several, some of which I can't speak on publicly at this point. But as I've put out on social media, we've been making a strong effort to contact state and local and federal officials, and getting their help, kind of pushing what I would call our requests to our government forward. We met with Senator Grassley's team with the Senate Judiciary Committee. They sent a letter about 2.5 weeks ago to the DOJ and FBI and some other folks. And we met with Winsome Sears, Lieutenant Governor here in Virginia. We met with Jason Yaris, the Attorney General's office here in Virginia. They're about to send a letter in kind to the same people. I was on the phone the other day with the representative for Representative John McGuire in his office, who are also trying to help. And so some of the asks that are in those letters, we're kind of holding close to the vest right now, and don't want to share those. We're working with some other people and or organizations that again I can't talk about right now, but there are a lot of things happening that are exciting, and we're hopeful that that something comes from it. Like Tom said, we don't know if Amy's alive. We feel that she is, and I don't know how to make sense to people what that feeling feels like to me and my parents. So we don't know if she is alive. We don't know if she's alive, where she is. We do think we have a pretty good idea who was involved in regard to what happened to her that night, and we're working on accountability for that person or those people. All I can say is we're advancing our efforts. I still feel like we're picking up momentum. After the show came out, I was awful afraid that much like has happened many times with other shows, and the story's renewed for a period of time, and then everybody kind of loses interest with the news cycle, changing, and something happens in the world. I don't feel really like that's happened in this case this time. This morning I was contacted by a congresswoman, who I won't share names yet, but she's, we still have people reaching out that want to help us, and asking what they can do for us. So we're just pushing as hard as we can, and we're going to continue to until we're presented with a reason that tells us that it's futile. And as of yet, we haven't been presented with any reason.
Well, I think it's been helpful, Brad, that you have been so proactive on social media, responding to people, answering their questions. Are there any rumors or misconceptions or inaccuracies out there that have popped up since we last spoke that you want to address?
Yeah, plenty.
That
So there was a recent article that came out in the Hollywood Reporter. I since spoke with that reporter that put that story out. When I first read it, it was news to me, and I'm like, it stated that the bar worker that yelled "Senorita" kidnapped that Elizabeth Lewis had testified to in the grand jury had come forward, and that investigators were meeting with her and speaking with her. Untrue. It's unsubstantiated, uncorroborated. Our investigators, our family, our attorney, our whole team, nobody knows anything about it. So that girl, we still don't know who she is. We never have. So that's an untrue statement. There's a suggestion that Amy may have a child or children. I think that's purely speculative at this point. I don't know of any information that would prove that. So I don't. There was an AI video, and there's been a couple, and a new one I saw yesterday actually, that is put out on YouTube. And it just so happened that a number of the things in the Hollywood Reporter article mimic, kind of echoed what was in one of those AI videos I saw. And I spoke with the reporter again, and he, denied seeing that video. He would not share his source with me, which, I can respect. But so, yeah, we don't know where any of that information came from. There's a new one about, I guess, a girl who was trafficked that has come forward saying that Amy gave her Longwood college ring, this silver ring that was in a box, and she's had it for 20 some years. Don't know anything about it. And so there's several things that pop up, which, I partly appreciate, because it sparks a lot of interest and a lot of chatter, and people kind of, you see the story kind of coming down, and then it kind of pops back up and pops back up. So I don't hate really when things like this come out. It does cause me to have to spend quite a lot of time refuting these things online and in social media, where people ask, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? And I just have to kind of repeat myself ad nauseum. So yeah, there's a lot of things that have come out. What I would say to the public is that, first of all, there are a lot of things going, like I just told you, that I wish I could share online. I think it would create a little bit of a firestorm, but I just can't right now. But when and if there is any big or breaking information, like has been presented in these false articles, you're going to hear it from me directly on social media. So I would hesitate to, everybody knows you don't believe what you hear all the time. But if I put it out on social media, you can trust that it's true. And if you see something online like that I haven't talked about, you can make a safe bet it's not true.
Tom, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your experiences with Amy. I think that helps kind of paint the picture about those months before the cruise. Is there anything that you wanted to add? Anything that you wanted to clear up?
Well, yeah. So, I don't have a big social media presence at all. It's just something that I don't know, just don't do. But fortunately, I can view a lot of these things without having an account. They're either reposted on YouTube, or you can view, videos and stuff that are on Instagram and stuff. So I've kept up on all of Brad's interviews, and then there's been a lot of people that have been helping the Bradleys on social media, particularly on TikTok, that have been testing some of the theories and been very helpful. And I've heard a few things, and so I wanted to touch base on a couple things. Remember, I was with the Bradleys Ron and Brad and Paul the entire time we were in Curacao.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving the vehicle when we were coming back from a day search when Brad heard Amy yell his name.
Mm.
I was driving and I heard it too. So and we had a conversation and we turned around, and unfortunately we didn't find the vehicle, but I heard it too. The other thing
You
is
both heard it. You're
I
sure
heard,
you
yeah,
heard it. Yep.
I
Yeah.
heard,
In the
I
car.
heard someone, yeah, we were sitting right next to each other but I was driving, you have to be 25 to rent a car. So I was driving one and Ron was driving. We had two cars. So I was driving Ron and Brad was my passenger, and Paul and Ron were in the other one. And we also had a couple people, local contacts on the island that were traveling with us. One day we were with the chief of the harbor police who was interviewed. And then the other days we were with some local contacts that Iva had developed while at the initial beginning of the search for Amy. So we had them in our automobile. The other thing is that I've seen videos about sightings of Amy on the island, and I want to say that, listen, if Amy wanted to leave, didn't like her life in Richmond, didn't want to be around her family, she would just tell them, I'm moving to the Caribbean, or I'm moving to Europe, or I'm moving to wherever I was. That's the kind of person she was. She was super straight up. And she would just go. She would find a job and move. So there would be no disappearance or no dramatic disappearance. The other thing is that we got a lead that Amy was working in the Mambo Beach area of Curacao, where it's a very touristy area. There's a lot of beach clubs, right on the beach with the neon lights and the dance floors, but you're actually on the beach in the surf. And so we drove out there one day and following the lead, and we saw a woman that could have been Amy's doppelganger.
Mm.
I walked up and I spoke to her. She was a bartender, cocktail server at this particular beach club on Mambo Beach. So we stopped pursuing that lead because I immediately went over and grabbed Ron and Brad, and we all walked over and we saw her and we went, oh, that's the person that we keep hearing about is being reported as Amy, because she had
What did she sound like? I mean, did it sound like her?
No. This was a European, a woman that was, I can't remember.
So she had an accent. She was clearly not her.
Right, it wasn't, but it was a woman that looked like her and
Yeah.
she had the same haircut and she had blue eyes. Not, they weren't the same. She didn't look exactly like Amy, but if you didn't know who you were looking for, you would assume that it possibly could have been her, because we had gotten a number of leads. So I've seen a bunch of TikToks where people are talking about how come they never followed up on these leads about Amy. Well, we did. We went to Mambo Beach. We found a woman that worked at one of the clubs that looked enough like her that the people that didn't know Amy would assume it was her, or possibly could have been her. You follow me?
Yep.
So, yeah. So I just want to clear that up too. And like I said, if Amy wanted to start a new life somewhere, she would have just told her family she's starting a new life.
Yeah.
And she would have done it.
Right.
There would have been no drama or suspense or mystery about it. She would have just packed her bags and split.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person she. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't know. I just to go back to what we talked about, I had a great relationship with Amy. She was special because she was just, she liked me for who I was, and I liked her for who she was, and she didn't need anything from me. She was just amazingly independent. Didn't need me to solve any problems for her. Didn't need me to do anything for her other than spend time with her. And she was super competitive. I'm 6'2". She was the all-star basketball player, and it used to kill her that I could slam dunk a basketball and she couldn't.
Yeah.
So it just used to make her, but she could outshoot me, out dribble me. She could run circles around me, but I could do one thing she couldn't do, and it made her nuts.
Right.
So, but it was all in good fun and good ribbing. And, I talked about her like making audibles when we would make dates. She would go, hey, let's do this instead. Well, I tell you a funny story. I showed up, I had just gone shopping and at a really nice department store in Richmond. You know this story, Brad. And I picked her up for a date in this brand new sweater that I got. And I was feeling tall, standing tall, feeling really good about how I looked. And I rang the doorbell at her apartment, and she opened the door and she went, And I went, what are you talking about? She goes, I'm not going out with you in that sweater. So I said, what are you talking about? I love this. I just bought this today. And she's like, you need to go to the store and buy something else or go home and change, because I am not going out with you in that sweater.
I hope you kept the receipt so you could return it.
Yeah. Oh, no, I kept it. I liked that sweater a lot. I just never wore it around her again.
There you
go. That's the kind of person, Amy was. She was just straight up. She told you how she felt. She was real sweet about it, but she wasn't leaving the house until I showed up in something else,
Yeah, didn't she?
What's that?
He renamed you.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So, I go by Thomas. That is my name. All my friends address me as Thomas. And even when I knew Amy, professionally, all my business cards say Thomas on it. All my friends here where I live now call me Thomas. And for the last 30 years of my life, they've called me Thomas. I have a sister that calls me Tom, and my brother calls me Tom, and I introduced myself to Amy as Thomas, and she went, no, you don't look like a Thomas. I'm going to call you Tom. So the Bradleys and Amy are the only people in my life that refer to me as Tom.
Well, I guess I am now too, Tom.
Well,
Thomas,
yeah, that's fine.
Tom, yeah.
Well, I don't want to confuse anybody.
Right.
So, but yeah, everybody that knows me knows I go by my full name, which is Thomas, and I have all my entire adult life.
Yeah.
So, but Amy didn't like that. She thought it was too formal, too snobby sounding, and just dumbed it down to straight old Tom. And and I was okay with it because I liked her, and she could call me whatever she wanted as long as she wasn't calling me a four-letter word. So
right. Brad, what do you want to add?
I just, I want to thank Tom for, coming on here and talking today. It's always very enjoyable for me and my family to hear, all the wonderful things that he's always said about Amy and about us. And it's just a pleasure to listen to. I know I didn't speak a whole lot during this thing, but I was just kind of sitting back, enjoying what what Tom was talking about. So first of all, thank you, Tom. And
sure.
Nate, to you for having us both on, and again, this whole thing that we did today, this interview is not in any way to refute the fact that Amy dated women. I mean, she obviously, and, but everybody online took it and ran with it when they don't really know Amy. They don't know Amy at all, and they don't know her story. They don't know what she was all about back then. And I thought it was important if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it. And I'm glad Tom was willing to come out today. And sorry that he wasn't represented in the same way on the documentary. Would have saved everybody a lot of time. Talking back and forth online to the trolls that like to say the things that they say. But this was just to talk about Amy and give people a better picture of who she was from another person who knew her very well and cared a lot about her. And I hope that did that.
Absolutely. Tom, share the name of the website. How can people follow the updates?
So yeah, well, I think you meant Brad.
Sorry, I said Tom. Yeah, I meant Brad.
Well,
Um,
I know the website, but Brad can tell you.
Yeah.
so the website is amybradleyismissing.com. It's actually going through a major overhaul right now and an upgrade to include a lot more functionality and videos and links to social media and all the kind of things. We're kind of bringing the outdated website into the 21st century. So amybradleyismissing.com. The tip line 804-789-4Amy. That's 789-4269. The GoFundMe page is out there. I know people have given us a lot of flack about us trying to make money. I can assure you there's no truth to that. The things that we're doing aren't free and they're not cheap. So any help that anybody can continue to offer us is very much appreciated. The email, amybradleyismissing@gmail.com. And that thing has been blowing up for 3+ months now. So please, continue to send us any information you think is important, however big or small it may be. I've said many times, I think that we're potentially one person away, one share, one repost, one comment away from this reaching the right person that's willing to speak up, because we know somebody knows something, and I think quite a few people know something. So we're still going to hold on to hope that that Amy's out there. We operate every day like she's out there waiting for us to save her, and we're going to continue to do that unless presented with, like I said, any information that that makes it clear that that's not going to happen. Thanks again. I hope everybody keeps talking and asking questions and sharing, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm, and hopefully our the contacts that we've made in the government will parlay into something a lot more meaningful. So stay tuned, and I'll be posting anything and everything I can as soon as I'm authorized to do it.
So there you go. Brad and Tom, my thanks to them for speaking out. Again, you can go to amybradleyismissing.com for the latest information from the family. And it would be quite something if this case is able to get wrapped up. It's nice, as Brad mentioned, that politicians and other leaders are interested in this story, because often as time goes by, it just fades away and you don't hear anything. But this is a family who is missing a sister and a daughter since 1998. I was 16, I think, 17. It's crazy to think about. Again, my thanks to them. And I want to thank newspapers.com, the sponsor of Courtroom Insider. They've been with us the past few months, and we love having them on board with us. Here, I'm going to show you on newspapers.com. Type in Amy Bradley, and you can find all sorts of archived stories from the 90s when this happened. For instance, this is one from the Daily Press, March 31st, 1998. Family of missing woman setting up communication center to find Amy. Not giving up. And there you see Amy with her brother, Brad, who we just spoke with in the top photo. Her parents are there, Ronald and Iva. We're thinking of and doing everything we can possibly do to get the word out about our daughter. You can go to newspapers.com and do a deep dive on this story, so many other stories out there, not just in the true crime realm, but also in everything, anything that you might be interested. If it's your own family history, if it's your own neighbor's family history, whatever you want, newspapers.com has it for you. And you can, of course, do a 7-day free trial. And it makes a good holiday gift, too, if you're looking to give somebody something cool for the holidays coming up. Thank you very much for being here. Tomorrow, it's election night. So here's what I'm thinking. We're going to be here in our newsroom, our whole team working, but the numbers really don't start coming in until 9 o'clock for us. So we're going to go live tomorrow, 7 o'clock, Courtroom Insider, live right here. And I want to take your questions. I hope you'll have some, and your comments. Peggy will be here moderating, and we'll just talk. We'll talk about the latest news in a lot of cases that we have followed. We'll touch on the latest for those cases. Koberger will have the latest on the Matthew Vaughn case. We'll have the latest on all sorts of other stuff. It'll be a little bit looser maybe than past Courtroom Insiders, not so structured, but maybe that can be more fun. So join me tomorrow night, 7 o'clock here on the East Idaho News YouTube channel for a live episode, Courtroom Insider, and we'll have some fun and maybe do some giveaways or something. Here's where you can find me. I'm on Facebook, Insta, and X, and also YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And also, our Secret Santa videos are out. So, if you want to feel good after this, watch our Secret Santa videos, share them with your friends, share them with your neighbors, and I hope that you know how much I appreciate you being here. Really appreciate you watching. We'll be back tomorrow night for another Courtroom Insider. Take care.